Hi, I'm Ashley from the Environmental Education team here at Central Coast Council, and today I'm joined by a very special visitor. This is an eastern blue-tongue lizard. Now, lizards are a really common backyard visitor here on the Central Coast. We actually have 814 different species of lizards in Australia, and 90% of those are found nowhere else in the world. There's quite a big variety of different lizard species. We have geckos, dragons, skinks, legless lizards, even the beautiful big goannas. The blue-tongue lizards here, they are pretty common, but unfortunately because their legs are so small, they often get mistaken accidentally to be snakes. They've got that kind of triangular pointy head, and some people accidentally think that they're a snake and then intentionally kill them. And not only is that absolutely devastating, but it is also illegal. Now, blue-tongue lizards do love to put on a bluff display to make them look big and scary. What they can do is open their mouth and hiss. They'll show the bright red insides of their mouth and the bright blue tongue, which is actually a sign of danger in the animal kingdom. They love to live in woodlands and grasslands, but they're also pretty well adapted to urban lifestyles, living in parks and backyards, as long as they have somewhere where they can seek shelter and protection. One of my favourite facts about lizards is, despite the common misconception that most reptiles lay eggs, they actually give birth to live young. These little blue-tongue lizards can give birth to a litter of up to 20 little baby lizards in late September each year. Now, sadly, habitat loss is a major cause of population decline of reptiles on the Central Coast. But the good news is there's an easy way that you can help provide habitat to lizards in your backyard by building what we call a lizard lounge. And you don't need any fancy materials. There's heaps of different options of things that you can most commonly find in your backyard or in your shed, or buy really cheaply that can be really suitable items to make your lizard lounge out of. Now, the first thing that the lizards will need is shelter. They need shelter to keep them dry from the weather, but also to protect them from predators like dogs and cats. This is from a pine tree in my house. It's not native, but the shape of it provides a really good hollow for them to go inside. Their favourite type of shelter is a hollow log, but hollow logs are getting harder and harder to come by, so there are heaps of other things you can use, like you could make a tunnel out of bricks, you could use terracotta pipes or pots, or even PVC pipes if you had to, as long as it's strong and stable, big enough for them to get their whole body in without getting stuck, and long enough for them to fit the whole length of their body inside with a little bit of room on either end. You can also use lots of bark to pile up around it. That'll provide them with lots of little spots for some extra shelter. Now, lizards actually shed their skin up to a couple of times a year. So in order to make a little day spa for them to scratch on and to help get that skin shed, we can provide some nice, really rough logs and rocks. So if you put them in and around your lizard habitat at home, you might even see them scratching their body on those when it comes to the time of year when they need to shed their skin. Now, water can also help with the process of them shedding their skin, as well as obviously providing them with an important source of drinking water. So you want to provide a really shallow dish of water. Something like a plate or an old saucepan is fine. Just make sure that it's on a stable surface, and you can even pop a few little twigs or sticks on the side so that if anything falls in, it has an easy way to get out. Now, lizards are cold-blooded. So one of the really important things that we have to add to our lizard lounge is a rock in order for them to sun themselves. You'll see this rock here has a beautiful flat surface on the top. And what lizards will do is go onto this rock first thing in the morning, because overnight they can get quite cold while it's dark. And before they can start actively finding food during the day, they need to bask in the sun and use those sun's rays to warm their body up so that they have the energy to go about their day. So providing them with a sun-baking rock in an area that gets lots of access to morning sun will be a really good way to help them start the day. Now, of course, we also need to provide lots of plants in and around the area that we create our lizard habitat in our backyard. And it doesn't really matter what plants you use. They like really dense plants. Things like kangaroo grass is awesome. Anything that has seeds or berries can provide a nice food source for them. Anything that attracts insects, like plants that create beautiful nectars, will be great for them, because then they can eat the insects. And even if some of the timber in your lizard lounge starts to rot or deteriorate, they'll love that because it'll attract insects and then they can feast on those insects. If you do plant plants around your lizard lounge, make sure you also use some of the mulch like this to put around the edges of your plants. Not only will that prevent water from evaporating, but it'll also create little hiding spots for smaller lizards and also the insects that the lizards will love to eat. And remember, it doesn't have to be fancy. There are heaps of different options of materials that you can use as long as the animals have shelter, protection from the rain and from predators. Then they're going to be really grateful for you for providing them with that habitat in your backyard to provide them with a safe home to live into. In addition to building a lizard lounge in your backyard, there are lots of other things that you can do to help protect lizards like this beautiful blue tongue here on the Central Coast. The first one is trying to keep dogs and cats away. If you have a cat in particular, make sure they stay inside because they're natural hunters and they will cause a lot of damage to local lizard populations. Also, try and avoid using snail baits and all sorts of pesticides and herbicides wherever possible, because a lot of lizards can get very sick if they eat a snail or a slug that has been baited. Also, whenever you're driving, pay particular attention to any reptiles, particularly lizards that might be crossing the road. Even when you first start your car, make sure there's nothing hiding out near any of your wheels or sunning itself on your driveway. When you're mowing the lawns, have a look around your grass. If you're using the whippersnipper, double check before you get in there with the lawnmower and the whippersnipper to make sure that we're not causing any injuries with those particular tools to any lizards that might be in our gardens. And if you do have lots of leaves in your backyard, lizards really appreciate if you leave them there. Don't rake them up and throw them in the green bin. Rake them into a little pile or don't even rake at all. The lizards will really appreciate having that extra habitat in your backyard. It's also really important that we don't feed any of our native wildlife. This applies for all wildlife species. We don't want them to become dependent on humans providing them with food, because if we go on holidays or we move house, then they might have lost that ability to fend for themselves. And if you have a dog or a cat, try not to leave their food bowls outside, because the lizards might try and eat their food, which not only is really bad food for them, but it also puts them in a position where they're really exposed to potential predators. Now, in New South Wales, all of our reptile species, all of our native species are protected under the Biodiversity Conservation Act, which means that it's illegal to kill them and it's also illegal to take them from the wild. If you are looking to get a reptile as a pet, it's important that you get a license through national parks and make sure that you buy your lizard off a licensed breeder. It is never okay to take a native animal from the wild and keep it as a pet. It's also really important that if you have a pet lizard and you don't want it anymore, you don't dump it back out into the wild, but you surrender it through the proper authorities. And if you do happen to find a sick or an injured animal on your backyard or anywhere in public, there are lots of great organisations that can help to rescue, rehabilitate, care for and release those animals back into the wild. It's best to try calling Wildlife Arc and Wires up here on the Central Coast. They'll have incredible volunteers that will be able to help out animals in need. So, on behalf of Bluey and I hope that you enjoy setting up a lizard lounge in your backyard, and I'm sure the lizards will really appreciate it. Thank you and bye for now.